Good evening and welcome to Hearthstone Half Hour or Hearthstone Hour. I'm Hammy and I'm here on behalf of Failcraft.org. Thanks very much for tuning in. This is the next in our series of Hearthstone videos. We're going to try and go for a format of half hour or hour depending on how we run, jump through the latest Hearthstone news and then jump into a little bit of gameplay. This week we have Blizzcon and what happened there in terms of Hearthstone, a little bit of an introduction to Arena after the run through of some of the various class tutorial decks and practice mode that we've done, and then finally jumping a little bit into the Paladin deck, which just for fun I've started to try and pick up, as I'm sure a lot of people have done after Blizzcon. So first up, Blizzcon and everything that happened there. Blizzcon 2013 just went the weekend before, and there was quite a bit of Hearthstone on display, including the Hearthstone Innkeepers Invitational, where a bunch of streamers, casters, some StarCraft 2 personalities, the first professional Hearthstone player in the form of Trump for Team Razor also played, duking out with each other in a knockout format. You could basically take 3 decks. If you lost with a deck, it was out and you had to play with the other decks, so the more games you win, the more you keep your decks private, and the more that you lose, the less options that you have. So it was a great tournament. Artosis came out top, StarCraft 2 caster over in Korea, for those familiar with the StarCraft scene, and he was playing quite an aggro Paladin deck that looked a lot of fun to play and won a lot of fans, particularly with Priest and Mage being very popular in the current metagame. So winding it right back to if you're new, we'll be doing a bit of a run through of Arena because I've not done that on any YouTube videos yet, chatting a bit more about BlizzCon, and then also having a quick look at playing Paladin with straightforward cards, straight from the tutorial deck, and then seeing what you can complement it with in terms of basic cards as well. The other very cool thing that happened at BlizzCon is that the mystery minions were announced, and Elite Tauren Chieftain was one of them. The Blizzard namesake fun band that they have and coming up in terms of characters, and he's quite an interesting card too. I don't think he's actually been patched into the game yet. I'm just going to have a quick look. He's not there yet. I'm sure he will be at some point soon. The final piece of BlizzCon news is that, of course, Hearthstone is going into open beta, so great news for everyone who's been waiting for keys. I know I was waiting for quite some time, finally got mine not too long ago, hence the start of these videos, but Blizzard said it would be a Blizzard month, so in a joking fashion they said it would probably be sometime around January. There are still places giving away keys, so hopefully you can get lucky and get in, and if not, really glad that you're able to join us here and get involved. Okay, so the first thing we're going to jump into, and I'm sorry that I'm not at the beginning of an Arena run, is just a little bit of a chat about the Arena. So in our YouTube series and on Twitch so far, we've done a little bit of voice commentary and really just a new players look through playing the different decks, some very high level first impressions, nothing too in depth. A, because I don't have the knowledge just yet, and B, because I've been intentionally trying to stay away from reading too much about the game, reading too much about decks, and BlizzCon this weekend just gone was the exception to that, where I actually jumped straight in and watched the live tournament. It was a lot of fun. The last piece on BlizzCon, you can see a few free streams, a few free VODs, including the finals, live on the BlizzCon site, or if you go to Battle.net you can click through to the BlizzCon site from there. So there's some free content. You didn't have to have the season pass, so I would definitely encourage you to, even if you haven't really played the game or just fancy looking at what it's like in a competitive environment, taking a look. The casters get really stuck in, but it just gives you a sense of what competitive play looks like. Don't have to be pressured by it, but it was a lot of fun, and really glad that a lot of people seem to enjoy it. Okay, so the Arena. Now, if you haven't seen anything about the Arena, you need to earn a bit of gold to get in, 150 gold. You can earn that from doing daily quests. See, I'm not too far in any of my particular classes here and really need to get stuck into some of them. But jumping into the daily quests, and you can complete these daily quests either in play mode, which is jumping in against random other human players on Battle.net. I think you can also proc them potentially by going into practice mode as well. I'd need to double check that. But if you don't want to spend real money, completing the quests nets you gold, 120 gold, playing through actually just leveling up some of the classes will net you some gold as well. You get 3 wins in play mode and things like that, so it's worth jumping into play mode, completing quests, and that gives you your monies to enter the Arena. Now the Arena, forge a deck quickly from random cards. If you've played any other card games, this is a draft. It's a straight up draft, and in terms of playing games like Magic or Pokemon, there are various forms of drafts, but basically you get given a set of cards and you've got to pick one, then you get given another set of cards, then you've got to pick one, so on and so forth, until you have a complete deck. Now, draft formats, unlike constructed, because you're picking cards and the decks are a little bit more flexible, they tend to have slightly more lax rules. So in Hearthstone constructed, for example, you can only have 2 of any particular card as a hard limit, hard cap. In the arena, because it's draft, you don't have that limit. So if you are lucky enough to get 3 amazing spells or 3 amazing minions, you can go ahead, pick all 3 of them. You're not going to be limited in the same way as you would be in constructed. Of course, when you get into the arena, and depending on how I do in this run, maybe we'll get to have a quick look at me doing a draft pick later. You have to pick one of 3 random heroes to start with. So instead of this screen, it'll give you 3 random heroes. It might be your favourite heroes, it might be your worst heroes. So by the time you're jumping into the arena, it's probably a good idea if you've at least played a little bit of each hero in practice mode, just so you have an idea of how they play, the kind of class specific cards that they have, and a bit of an idea of basic strategy. The important thing in arena is that you're drafting a deck with a bit of a plan. Now, there's always a random element as to what cards you actually get, but you can try and pick things that go along a particular theme. So, as I mentioned very briefly in a previous video, either tech, either cards that have synergy, they complement each other in terms of their abilities and what they do. And if you played a particular deck or a couple of particular decks in practice mode, then you should have a reasonably good look as well as to what the good class specific cards are. Stuff where if you see it you think, I've got to have that, it's absolutely amazing, and stuff where you think, maybe I can leave it for a little bit as well. Cool. So in this deck, you can see I've lost already once. I got Mage, which theoretically was very good. You didn't see me go through this draft process. I got a little bit spell hungry. 3 flame strikes, yeah. If I live to the late game, then 3 flame strikes will be useful. I think with this deck at the time, based on what came up in the drafts, in terms of the draft, as soon as you pick your hero, you get 3 cards, you've got to choose one. 3 cards, you've got to choose one. So on and so forth until you got 30 cards. I went pretty spell heavy. The Sorcerer's Apprentice there, my spells cost 1 less. That's just a generally pretty solid minion, a 3/2 as well. Cheap mana to drop. Ironbeak Owl, again, sit in a draft silencing a minion. If you drop the Ironbeak Owl into play, and as soon as it drops into play, you can use that battle cry of silence a minion. You can get rid of a taunting minion on the other team, something with a very dangerous ability. Lots of different options there. Nice thing to have. Knife Juggler, if you're summoning a lot of minions, dealing a little bit of random damage is quite good, and then it's a 2 mana 3/2, which is pretty solid. Arcane Intellect, just 3 mana, draw 2 cards. Draw power is generally always good, as long as it's not at the sake of anything else key in your deck, making sure you've got a bit of balance. The no mana cost 6 in my deck is a bit questionable. You can see that I'm quite weighty early on in terms of things I can do, and then suddenly in the mid game I'm still playing cheap cards, so I'm a little bit vulnerable there if someone's got into the full swing of their deck, or if they've got some big minions out at that point, and then suddenly all my flame strikes kick in at 7 mana. Elsewhere, Raid Leader, fairly solid card. Cone of Cold I picked because I was just drafting a lot of mage spells. Fireballs, Polymorph in a mage deck, amazingly solid. 1/1ing any huge powerful minion is absolutely great. A couple of taunting tanks to get things off me. Defender of Argus is a great card. Buffing your minions, giving them both taunt as well. It effectively lets you pull a couple of tanks into play straight away, so that chap will not only buff your minions on the table but give you an extra couple of tanks. Your opponent's going to have to attack them or deal with them before coming for your hero, and if you play this, well, as it says adjacent, if you play it in between 2 pretty strong minions, you get the effect on both minions either side as well, so worth a bit of smart play there. Probably not the best draft in Water Elemental, generally tends to get traded away, but I like the card, so what the heck. Flame Strikes, a little bit power hungry there, but a big clearance ability late game. I can really start shelling things down. I just need to make sure that in that slightly weak 5 and 6 mana phase, turn 5, turn 6, I actually get that far. And then I'm pulling out Corehound, War Golem and Sea Giant. Sea Giant, if I've hopefully got a lot of minions down by that point, then he costs 1 less for everyone on the battlefield. Pretty handy too. So that was the the rough draft I tried to go for, it's not a standard mage deck if you were going in constructed, but I very much tried to at least give it a bit of a theme, cheaper spells, support with minions, and then hopefully when I get to the late game, a bit of clearance. But as you can see, a little bit weak on late game minions, a little bit spell heavy, could probably do with a few more chunky minions, especially in the 5 and 6 mana range, and also very reliant on the early game. So, without further ado, let's be jumping into a nice little draft game. Into the arena, and we've got a warrior. So, starting hand, I've got some reason. I've got, you know, a nice early play. Raid leader's okay. That warden would be nice turn 4. I'm going to trade those 2 in, just because I'd like something a little bit earlier, and that's pretty good. Got some good options. That was a very random draft. I'm never going to have a weapon equipped in this deck, so it's really just a first turn card. I could charge, but I have no weapon. Stealth is pretty good. I'm going to just drop them for a bit of trading. Turn 1 is go. So, if you've only been watching these videos, and I'm guessing you probably haven't been, but if you are new, you might not have seen too much of Warrior. Warrior's ability, Armour Up. Warriors swing a lot with weapons, like in the WoW game, and they've got some quite nice weapon abilities in similar instance as well. Then he's got nothing to start with. A Sorcerer's Apprentice is a very obvious target if I drop it, but at the same time, there's nothing really for me to zap. I could have a cheap Cone of Cold. 3 attack and 2 health is a pretty solid card to drop, so a fairly quiet early game so far. Let's see what Mr. Warrior's got up his sleeve. If he doesn't have much... Okay, he's pushing himself for a 3. Okay, he's dropped a board out on the field. 2 damage to enemy minions and freeze them. My slightly cheaper spells are coming out. Cone of Cold. It's not a waste this early. I could do a little bit of trading and clear the field. I don't really want to lose my Sorcerer's Apprentice though. 2 damage to enemies and freeze. I think a quick freeze early on. That's not going to do too much harm. There's nothing else I can play for the time being. Feels pretty good. And you know what, I'm just going to take that trade. Get the danger off the field. Leave me with my important minion and keep it coming. One thing with warriors, or indeed anyone, if someone's struggling for cards early game, you'll probably see them use their hero ability a little bit more. Not a massive tell, they might just not have any low mana cards. There we go, Warriors drops his weapon. Going to start swinging, and it's an obvious thing for him to take out. So if I drop another one of those, it's probably just going to get killed in good measure. I'd probably quite like to hang on to it. The benefit of stealth is that until I attack, he can't attack me. He can't see me either. There's nothing else I can do. I could drop this, but I think that's just going to be fodder for his Fury War Axe, and that's only got 1 more health to go. So, although I haven't been able to spend all my mana, we may as well keep it going. What's he got coming on for? Okay, a charge. That's a pretty strong card. And he's still got the 1 durability left on that weapon, so he can swing as well. I would quite like to kill this. It's only got 3 health. I don't want to burn everything down. Blizzard should clearly be saved for a little bit later. A raid leader could let me take him down, and I'd have a raid leader on the table. I think that feels like quite a solid move. So let's trade away that nasty minion. A raid leader is vulnerable. I'm okay. Perhaps the better choice would have been to fireball him and then charge, save my raid leader in hand. He can't take them both if I drop sorcerers as well, but he'd definitely take 1. Given the nature of my later deck, I feel as though the sorcerers is perhaps good to keep in hand for now. Decisions. One less for spells or a fireball. I don't really have enough spells in hand, and I can cast that next turn anyway. Let's do 1 damage and see what he does. Generally, I feel more comfortable just getting minions on the table, but you have to think a little bit about how he's going to trade and what he's going to try and pick off and what's important to you later. Whenever a minion takes damage, get him 1 attack, and he's got nothing else going on as he's armoured up. He's going to swing, and that ability has given him another attack, and whenever a minion takes damage, he does take another attack on, so that's quite painful. If I leave him down for too long, he's going to become pretty dangerous. I can't kill him in one go. If I hurt him, he'll gain another attack, so I possibly don't even want to do that. At least it gives me a cheaper blizzard. So let's get some minions on the deck and see what he does. His armor's gone, of course, because when he attacked me, I did the damage back. 1 damage to a minion. Oof. So that gave him an extra 2 attack, and then his ability gave him another attack. Ouch! And there we have the Warrior's Cleave and Inner Rage. Some of the nice warrior abilities coming in. And he's suddenly got an immensely powerful minion with a bunch of health. And I'm going to struggle. It might be a time to drop one of my spells and see what happens, I think. If I drop a Core Hound, he'll probably just trade for it. Freezing with Blizzard at least gives me 1 turn, but I'm just stacking up the attack power for that thing. Let's get that down. He's frozen. If I don't kill him, this is a big gamble, because he's suddenly going to have another. He's 13, he can kill me in 2 shots. So I really got to hope that he can't heal that guy. At least my mage ability can take him next go. If he heals him, I may have lost the game. And for a card with the ability like that, it's probably best to actually, if you're going to try and attack it, try and get it down in one go. That's a powerful minion as well. And at least I can take out the 13 damage on, but there's still 10 on the table and I've got nothing in reply. So the priority is obvious. Just get him out of the way. And I've only got 6 left, so if he wants to, he can attack that. You can see this is the stage where it probably feels as though if I'd had some cards in my deck that I could draw a bit more with, or there are some draw options in my draft, a bit more draw power would be good. Please do attack him. That's fine by me. Less health on the dangerous minion, the better. Gain 5 armor, shield block, and draw a card. He's tanking himself up. He's going to heal himself. Perhaps buff the attack of this minion. Damaged minion 3/3. Ugh. And all the warriors buff cards are really coming out now and making his minions quite a pain. Oh, hello. What fun. And it's in lucky situations like that, or in draft situations where you can have more than one of the same card, that, you know what, drafting 3 flame strikes isn't so bad. There's not much else I can do mine, considering he's got 31 damage I need to do to him compared to my 20, but at least we cleared the field. So, although I'm a little on the back foot, at least I'm not down and out. Deal 1 damage to a minion and give it 2 attack. Well, there's nothing on the table for him to do that to. And he's got nothing else. So suddenly things have gone a bit quiet. I could go for a War Golem, I could go for a Core Hound. In terms of tradability, let's drop some of that. Let's get a Raging Worgen on the table. Now it's my turn to scare him with a few minions, see what you can do. And with a War Golem next turn, at least I've got the options still open. Whenever a minion dies, gain 1 attack. That could get nasty in a hurry. What else is he going to do with his 7 mana? That looks like a Destroy, Mortal Strike. Okay, fair enough. He's not going to kill me. He's just trading, fair enough. Execute, nasty card. And of course that card is buffing up anytime a minion dies as well, so that's not fun either. I think that's a bit of a no-brainer. An extra 2 cards, a Knife Juggler and a Sea Giant. There's not enough minions on the battlefield to make the Sea Giant worthwhile. I've only got 7 out of 10. The War Golem will at least let me trade 1 for 1 with him next go. So this is not looking great considering I'm 35 health on the warrior to 20 for me. But I'm still in the game. So look on the positives. So if we have a look at how this warrior's drafted his deck, he's gone for a lot of stuff whereby if characters are damaged, he takes a little bit. Aha! Commanding Shout. If he can't be reduced below 1 health, it means he survives. What you may have forgot is that I can just zap him for 1 next go anyway. I could freeze everyone, but there's no real point whenever it... Okay, so again, the Berserker gains attack again. When the Flesh-Eating Ghoul sees minions hurt, it gains attack, so a lot of his cards are just getting more powerful the more damage I do. Pretty good choice. The Sea Giant could go down after a Knife Juggler, and that would do 1 damage to a random enemy, but don't know if it would kill that. So I'm going to play a little bit safe. I could freeze everything and stall for a turn, or I could just get a Sea Giant down. It'll give him something to think about, and he may have to make a trade for it. And if I struggle, I can freeze. If I was going to freeze and drop a Knife Juggler, I could still drop that next go as well. We'll see whether that was a good decision or not very shortly. Oh, we've got an Inner Rage. Everyone taking swings. I'm getting pretty hurt. But he has no cards in his hand, so if I can restore board parity, I might have a reasonable shout. Because... no, let's think this carefully. That would have been the wrong move. So if I drop a Knife Juggler, I get the 1 random damage. For summoning anything else, I can still Frostbolt away this, and then I can take him with that for an equal trade, and that leaves the board free. I was thinking I had a minion to summon when I didn't. And I'll drop him. And I'll drop him. So, yes, he's still on the 36, but I've got a good amount of stuff on the table. So, it all depends on an Enrage for 3 attack. I can just trade him off as well. I can Flame Strike too. It feels like I may as well even trade and start wailing away against this armour. So unless he top decks something that lets him execute a damaged minion or something similar, I've got additional cards on him as well. So if he decks out, as soon as someone decks out in Hearthstone and they have no more cards to draw, they take 1 damage the first go, 2 damage the second go, 3 damage the third go, and yeah, you get the picture. So very, very slowly they die and die and die, and the longer that there's trouble, the more chance there is that you're going to win the game. So a card advantage on your opponent is never a bad thing if you have more cards left towards the end of the game. Of course, it depends whether you're just about to die or not. But in situations like this, he could be top decking very powerful minions, could be just drawing out something that's going to win the game for him. Who knows, he could have drafted a Ragnaros, or if they're all weak minions and he's used a lot of his powerful spells and abilities early on, it's the joy of draft. Deal damage to a minion and give it 2 attack. Has he got a something that... he's got nothing to trade that away. And I can freeze his minion for 3. I can drop my tank, which feels nice. I can deal 1 damage. It's going to be expensive, but I'm just going to get rid of that off the table. I've got Flame Strike where I can pretty much take anything low that comes down. I can have an extra little 3s, and his buff effectively means that I could take this next go. unless he can take out my Sea Giant. He can take out my Sea Giant. Back in the game. But okay, he can charge. He'll have to do a bit of trading. Violet Teacher. Okay, so whenever I cast a spell, I summon an apprentice. That will give me some options. He'll still have to kill me off. If I zap him for 1, then he will trade if he wants to try and get past the tank, unless he has something else. It's a bit of a risk. I may as well get another. This is a tad pointless. But by freezing it, at least I know he's not going to do damage next go. And it also gives me a 1-1 that I can trade for that rather nasty 4-1 with next go as well. So in the absence of anything else to do, I can't finish this now because sadly my big hitting Sea Giant has gone to the grave. Okay, very sensible. He's kept that in the game. Oh, right. That's the best option. If I trade for the apprentice and the apprentice and the teacher, I lose a chunk of attack and I'm left with not loads on the board. If I poly, I can still keep a bit of attack on the board, and it will summon another apprentice. I can trade the apprentice away for the 1-1 sheep, keep my flame strike. It feels good all round, and in fact, you know what, I may as well actually just drop a zap on that with my hero ability of Fire Blast, because that way at least it gives me another option to attack with. So, after going behind early on, and with that dodgy sort of mid-game phase, it feels okay. He's going to armour up again, and this is the stage whereby it looks as though a lot of his cards have gone out early game. So in the late game I'm coming through, and as we talked through earlier, Defender of Argus, I love this card. The obvious place just to drop it is in the middle of the minions that you want to buff and want to give the right stuff. As silly as that sounds, you might just throw it down on the table any old where and then think, oh, I've buffed these two to have tank and 2-2, but instead if I drop it in between my teacher, then I suddenly get a lot more powerful minion all round. And of course if I drop it between those two, he's got taunt already, so do make sure you don't just throw a card like that down on the table. So I need to work out how I'm getting past this tank. I want to keep my big attacking minion on the table. With a 2-2 tank, I'll keep the 3-3 up. It feels as though using these two chaps to trade is the obvious choice. Fabulous. The pressure's still on. I've got the minions on, so he could pull something amazing, but it's looking pretty good at this stage. And the light blades. So it's looking promising. The good thing is not to get too carried away. I can flame strike. And I get my extra minion as well. So let's just do a quick tot. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. And we have good game. Good stuff. So that was a slightly longer arena game. As you saw, I was a bit down in the early game and sort of pretty much on the back foot, but in arena that's not necessarily a problem. Everyone's deck has to burn out sometime, and there's a bit more randomness in it. He could have got a really randomly good draw. Could be I've drawn very smartly, or he could have suffered quite a bit and perhaps got not a so good draw after all. However, you could see clearly that in that game he was fading away a bit towards the late game, and when he faded away, my bigger cards started coming out, and I got back into it, which was really good. Cool. So, while things are going good, let's keep the roll going.